We are back for another episode of Accounting Conversations, and this week we have a super awesome guest, my good friend and mentor, Parker Ling, EA, brand new EA, and
Yep.
we're going to talk about everything EA today and talk a little bit about tax and, some of the other routes you can take other than just the CPA. So super pumped. Before we get started, though, we got to give a big thanks to our sponsor today, Big Four Transparency. So take it away, Chayton.
Okay, we're gonna try something new here. We're gonna share a screen if you're on watching us on YouTube or something. If not, we'll kind of make sure we talk enough about what's going on. So I just pulled up the accounting firm salary Google sheet that Big Four Transparency put together. It's based off of their form that you can go on their website and input in, and it's really good for just like trying to figure out if you want to go to a certain company, what that's going to look like for you way before you start interviewing and stuff. So I kind of was thinking we'd just kind of do like a role play kind of, maybe I'm looking for give me a city, Parker. Where should I try to work?
Do Tampa, Florida. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a bit risky.
Yeah. I don't know how many
you a Bucks fan,
there's
Parker?
going to be. Okay. There's
no.
Okay. I go
there's
to
a couple.
Yeah. Let's see how many there are. 150. Okay.
Sweet.
Now, you're in tax. So let's do tax. So we went from 150 in Tampa to 41 in tax. We've got a variety of certifications and stuff. We can sort it by how big the salaries are. So the person making the most here is a private accountant. He's making 150 and got a 30,000 bonus. He's living large. But let's say I want to do years of experience. Sorry, I'll keep this a little shorter. Let's do under 3 years, 3 years and under. Okay, so it's varying. The people with 1 year making between 52 and 60. If I've got 2 years, let's do sort it on this. If I've got 2, it gets up into the 75s region. Yeah, somewhere around there. So you kind of have a good, and then you can kind of start picking out companies. Like I can know if I want to work for PwC or looks like Baker Tilly's paying pretty good on here. Anyways.
Private equity money, baby.
Yeah. Anyways, that's our shout out for Big Four Transparency. It's really good to look up to slice on your specific things. If you're CPA, if you're an EA like Parker, like go see what EAs are making nowadays. See if it's worth it. So.
And even for that next promotion, being able to look in and be prepared and, coming into that interview and saying, hey, this is what everybody else in the country's making it at my certification level, my years of experience. What do I need to do to get that next big salary bump? And you can leverage this data to really make that happen. And that's the whole purpose of Big Four Transparency. So big thanks to Dom over at Big Four Transparency, and we'll be shouting them out over the next few episodes too. So back to the real reason why we're here, though. Parker Ling, you are in Utah, correct?
Yep. Pretty much around Salt Lake City-ish. So, yeah,
Ish.
right smack dab.
Okay, cool. So what firm do you work at? And then give us your little accounting journey, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like everybody has these weird stories of how they got into accounting.
Yeah.
Give us the weird story, man.
Dude, I'd love to. So I work for a pretty small company. It's called Elevation Tax Group. We're in technically West Jordan, which is just a kind of small city in Utah. I've been there about 2 years. I've been doing tax with them for a little over a year. So I'll just kind of give a background about myself. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do for school. So I started out, I was 18 and I was working at Domino's making pizza, just living life. And I was an assistant manager for there for about 4 years while going to school. And I originally planned on going into like managerial type roles Business management. That's what it's called. I was going to go into business management and just try that out, see if I liked it because that's what I was doing for work. And then I took a couple classes and then I took a couple finance classes because I really just wanted to get as much knowledge and experience as possible just to make sure I knew what I was doing. So I started just taking some accounting classes, some finance classes, just to broaden that out. And I started really enjoying finance classes. So I ended up changing my degree from business management into finance when I went into my undergrad. And I took, I think it was like half a semester into my finance degree and I hated it. And I was like, okay, this isn't it. So then I was like, what's kind of close to finance that will get me where I want to be and has a good trajectory? And I was like, okay, let's take some accounting classes. So I started taking accounting classes in my undergrad and just dove straight in, and I loved it. It was my very first intro to accounting class. I was addicted. I was spending hours and hours just making sure I understood debits and credits. I was like the teacher's pet where I was always raising my hand, just trying to show off how much I knew. I just loved it. And then it just kind of snowballed into just taking harder and harder classes as your degree goes on. And I just fell more and more in love with it. And towards, I'm trying to think of where exactly I was. I think it was about halfway through my undergrad. I was like, okay, let's switch careers into more of a accounting related role. So I did some digging and I ended up working at the current firm I'm at right now. I started out as a bookkeeper. So I started there. They gave me kind of like an entry level position, just understanding the basics of accounting and just implementing that. So I did that for about a year, and it was not even a year. Yeah, I guess it was about a year. I did that for basically 6 months. I went to my CEO and I was like, "Hey, I want to go into tax because our firm was all tax related." So I was like, "I want to go into tax. What can we do to get me there?" And so he was like, "Okay, well let's do this. Let's get you on that path." So then I ended up doing like a hybrid internship where I was half tax intern, half bookkeeper. So I kind of kept both of those roles. And
It's the way
then
to
I
do
started,
it.
yep. And then I started studying for the EA. And yeah, now that's where I am. So about a year into my internship, I passed all my exams, did all the licensing, and then they moved me over to a full-time role. So I've been in my role for only, what is it, August? About 4 months now. So that's pretty new, but I've been in tax. I consider myself, the tax internship counts. So I'm a little over a year in tax. So
I love it.
pretty cool.
I love it.
Yep.
Three things I want to point out there. One, you went on a little bit of a journey to get to accounting, and you knew it was what you wanted to do. I
Sure.
don't I don't think most people get that way, right? We need more people like you shouting out the profession who are passionate about it and love it because there's not enough of us out there, right? Um,
Yeah. Very
the
true.
second thing, you went right to your manager and you said, "Hey, what do I need to do to get to tax?" That's a big life lesson, I think, of just not sitting back and just letting things happen and going with the flow. You're taking control of your career, taking the bull by the horns and getting where you want to go.
Absolutely.
That's the way to
Yeah.
do it. And students
Yep.
need to pay attention to that.
Well,
No,
and
And
one
that was
thing that you could have been like is you could have been like, oh man, my manager hates me, like I'd rather be in tax, like, and you get like all bitter about it and then you end up leaving, but instead you had that conversation and it obviously worked out really well.
Yeah, no, I will say that's one thing about myself is I'm a go-getter. Like I don't shy away from challenges, right? So I had a passion and I knew that was where I wanted to go. And I was like, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to be honest with where my aspirations are. And if he, is cool with it or he can kind of meet me halfway, then awesome, right? It was funny because I was talking with a whole bunch of people after the fact, like I think a couple months down the line, and they were just like, "How did you do it? How did you go there? Like that's so scary," because a lot of people don't like they're scared to make that step, right? They're scared to take that step and take the leap. but it pays off so well in the long run because it gets you where you want to go and it gets your foot in the door and you can make decisions and just chase your dreams.
Yeah, I've attended 2 conferences this summer now, and I remember specifically someone mentioned to me, they're like, "Oh, dude, you're like fearless. Like you'll just go talk to anybody. You're posting on social media. You got your podcast. Like, how do you do that? You're not scared of anything." And I was kind of taken back because I'm like, none of this stuff ever like seemed scary to me, right? It just felt like the thing that I needed to do. So you got to have that attitude of just doing what you got to do to make it further in your career, and it's really not that scary if you look at it that way.
No, no, it's really not.
So give us the rundown of why you chose the EA versus the CPA. And
Yeah,
I love this
that's
conversation. We've had this
yeah.
multiple times, just me and you, but
Yeah, I've never heard it. I'm
why
ready.
why not
I'm ready to be
Yeah.
why
converted.
just the EA?
Yeah, so my original plan was to go CPA, right? Because in college, that's what they kind of tell you, right? All my professors were like, go CPA, go CPA, go CPA. And I was like, so I had that grilled into my brain, right? So then I went into my current firm. I started there and I went up to the tax team and I was like talking to them about where my goals were, what I wanted to do. And our firm had three, no, four EAs and two CPAs. So we had a lot more EAs than CPAs. So I was trying to gauge their perspectives, try and see what they did with like their journey. And I had one guy who said, like, he was basically my mentor because I would talk to him every day because it was the decision was so heavy for me because it was either I graduate with my undergrad and go EA or I do a whole nother year of school, get my master's and go CPA, right? So I was stressed because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. They're very big decisions. And so I was talking to the guys every day. And I had one guy tell me, he's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? If you go for the EA, you're going to get that within a year and you try that out. If you don't like it, go get your master's and go get your CPA at that point. It is better to get your foot in and to start your journey and just make sure that you are setting yourself apart than make a wrong decision type of thing. So that was kind of where I was like, okay, it really does not hurt, right? So yeah, then I looked at all the review material, I looked at the courses, I looked at everything, and I was like, okay, I can do that. I can do it, and then we'll just see where the journey goes. So I'm still on the journey technically, but it was so worth it for me. It was. I'm looking back now, and I'm so glad that I did the way I did.
So you're saying you're still on the journey. Does that mean are you all the way licensed as the EA, or do you have like a couple steps more to take?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm fully licensed as an EA, but I'm still kind of in that year transition period where I'm feeling it out.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's where I'm like, we'll see where the journey takes me. If I want to go get my CPA, I totally could, right? But I have the EA as a credential to kind of bolster myself up in a way, and so it's not going to hurt really. And if I want to go get my CPA, then I totally could, and I can have both licenses, and then I'll just be awesome.
With the potential changes in the 150-hour rule,
Yeah,
me and you could be taking a very similar path, Parker, of I'm going to get
yeah,
my EA first, get my 2 years of experience, then go for the CPA. I mean,
yep,
you wouldn't even have to go back to school, right? You can just sit
nope,
back, get your years of experience. You're already going to run circles around CPAs when it comes to the tax side of things. So
for sure, for
reg
sure.
and whatever other parts of the exam you decide to take for the CPA, because they have that second tax part you
Right,
can take.
yep, yep,
Dude, half the exam you already got under your belt, bro.
true. Now, and so I graduated with my undergrad with 141 credits. So like I'm good. It's kind of crazy because that was one thing that I was like, I only need like 9 more credits and I'll have 150. So yeah, but it's all right. I'm happy with where I'm going. And if I want to go get my CPA, totally could.
I want to see the stats of how EAs perform compared to CPAs when it comes to tax stuff. Because my,
Don't
you
start me
know,
on this.
my brain is telling me like EAs run circles around CPAs when it comes to tax, but like where's the data?
True.
Show me the money.
That's yeah. I mean, I can tell you from my perspective, it's a little biased, but
A little.
I feel like for me, the EA, it is all tax, right? And Caden, you can probably attest to this. Like the EA is all tax. The CPA, there's one big section on regulations, and it's not even all tax either. It's tax and
Business law.
legal.
Yeah.
Business law. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like the information that I have about taxes specifically, I feel like has more, like there's more substantial knowledge than you would if you were just a CPA. No offense, Caden. Just throwing
None
it out
taken.
there.
I'm not even in tax, so.
Yeah.
Hey,
How did you do on reg, Caden?
Good. Actually, I don't share my scores too often, but since we're on the podcast, I actually don't remember what I got on reg.
He's like,
That's how much little
I
it
got like a
matters.
90. I got a 97.
I'm trying to remember if that's one of the ones. I got a 90 on one of them, and I was pretty proud.
Dang.
I don't know if it
Dang.
was on tax or not, but
Oof.
one of them. The rest of them were less, but
It's all right. You passed. That's what matters.
Yeah, so Parker, maybe run us through why you chose tax, right? I personally see a huge opportunity in tax for a couple of reasons. One,
Yeah.
the accounting shortage is bad. The shortage of tax accountants is even worse. In my opinion, everything ties back to tax, right? Like if you're going to choose CAS and accounting services and advisory, like you got to understand the tax side of things to understand that as well. But why did you personally choose tax, and why is it fun for you, right?
Ooh.
Prove all
Yeah.
the people wrong who are like,
Yeah.
oh, tax is boring. Like, why'd you choose it? Why is it fun?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I chose it because I originally started, I wanted to do advisory, right? But I wanted to kind of find a little bit of a niche where I was like, I specialize in an area, right? So I kind of always had an inkling towards tax. Like every time, like I had my first tax class, I remember, and I felt like a kid in a candy store. It was so weird. I was like, I loved it. I was front row seat, just sitting there with like my eyes all wide, just absorbing all of it. It was just weird. And then I got
We
into my
gotta
audit
pause real quick. If you're listening on the pod, you should see Caden's face every single time Parker says he loves tax.
yeah, I did not feel that way during my tax class. But after this, I want to ask you to convince me. Tell me
Yeah.
why. Tell me
Yeah.
the reasons why it's like the tax is just all that.
Yeah. But it was funny because I took an audit class, complete opposite. I was falling asleep. It just would not stick for me. Like I knew the material, but I just was like, this is so boring. I couldn't stand it. But that's just how some people are, you know? Like some people just, they lean one way or the other, and that's awesome, right? That's why there is so many avenues in accounting, is because it's not for everybody. Like there are things that some people like and things that some people don't like. And that's why you can find your perfect avenue and your perfect area in accounting, because there's so many options. So yeah, but what's fun about taxes, you're gonna have me like nerd out over here, but
Let's
for
hear
me,
it. Give it all to us, man.
so for me, the biggest thing that I love about taxes is it's just like a checklist. I love having a checklist, and I love just being able to see how things flow, see how things operate. And with taxes, you throw one item into one part of the tax return and it flows to three others. Or you put one thing into the software and it just flows exactly where you want it. And to me, that is just it is just clean. It's beautiful. And I just love it. The other part of it too is there is so much information. I mean, there's a giant tax code with like 6,000 pages that you can just read all the time if that fancies you.
you like reading the tax code?
Sometimes. No, but like that's the thing is there's so much knowledge in tax. There's so much material that you could never get bored, right? Like there's always new things to learn. There's always new things to do. There's always new strategies and new things that you can implement with your clients. The possibilities are endless. And to me, that is just so exciting. I just love it.
That's the key word too that you use, strategy.
Yeah.
That's where taxes, especially with all the automation software that's coming through, that's
Yep.
where tax accountants are going to make their money, is strategy and helping their clients, save money on taxes and plan 4,
Sure.
5, 6 years out on what their taxes are going to look like.
Yep.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
You got me kind of there. I can get on board with the checklist and new information. And I also think that tax accountants don't ever have to justify their worth to an owner.
No.
It's pretty clear to everybody that people value their tax accountants a lot. So
Very true.
whereas like other parts of accounting, like an internal accounting department, sometimes owners can get a little bit cheap with it, right? They can hire their internal accountant. And like I was working for one client, we were helping them clean it up, and they had hired up this lady that didn't even know what she was doing and it messed everything up. But I mean, saved them money for the time being until they got the bill down the road. But it's just harder to justify.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to me, that's why I think it's crazy that there is a shortage in tax, because I see so much potential and so much worth that we can give taxpayers and clients and everybody. And I'm just like, it's just crazy to me that people don't see that, or they don't want to like grasp onto that. But to each their own, more work for me.
Yeah. So I want to know too, how was your first tax season? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So I'll be honest. I haven't necessarily had a tax season like fully. So my very first tax season where I was like, okay, I'm fully in, we had a staff member quit in the bookkeeping department, and my CEO was like, I really need your help. And it was like smack dab in the middle of tax season, where he was just like, hey, I really need your help. And because the bookkeeper that quit, he fell a little bit behind. And so there was a lot of catch up to do. And so they were stressed, right? So he was like, hey, can you help me with this? Like, we need to get these caught up. So my roles switched for like two to 3 weeks during tax season, where I was just focused on doing bookkeeping stuff. So the time that I was in wasn't half bad, but I also didn't get to fully experience it as much as other people. I was still working, pretty crazy hours, not crazy, but like pretty substantial hours. I still had a lot of work to do, but yeah, we'll see how next season goes. I'm sure it'll be awesome. I'm excited, actually. I'm like a little antsy because I'm just like, I have an idea of what it's going to be like, but I won't know till it's there. But I'm also excited to see what that's like. It's a weird feeling.
You're like the same stage we're in with college football around the corner, right? You smell fresh cut grass and you're like, oh, it's time. It's that time of year.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah. How does your firm handle like busy season hours? Like, are they doing like the stereotypical old CPA model? Do you guys have like, can you work remote part of the time? Is there anything like that they're doing to really help even out the hours during busy season?
Yeah. So for us, I would say ours is actually not bad, because the horror stories that you hear are people working like 70 to 80 hours a week. I heard that all the time. And I was like, oh, that's a little scary, because like you don't want to work 80 hours a week for 2 months straight, right? But my firm, we have a minimum of 50 hours during busy season. And then anything above that, we actually get a little bit of like comp time. So it kind of rewards us a little bit if we work extra, or if we put in those extra hours, because they kind of understand how stressful it is. And then the good thing is after busy season, if you work a whole bunch of hours, you have a whole bunch of comp time that you can use. And so that's kind of where it evens out a little bit, because a lot of the tax preparers at my firm, they'll take like 2 weeks off in the middle of June because they're like, I need a break, and they have comp time to cover that.
Okay,
So
so you're
yeah,
you're not saying like overtime pay. You're saying like if I worked 80 hours, I'd get potentially, like 30 hours extra in the summer
right,
that I could take off. Oh,
right,
yeah, there we
yep,
go.
yep, yep. So that's one strategy where I'm like, oh, I love this, because then it motivates you. I would say it motivates you to want to work more during busy season so that you can enjoy the time off in the summer. Especially if you have young kids, like a lot of the preparers do at my firm. They go and they take vacation after vacation to who knows where, to Disneyland, to Florida, to Paris, whatever. Like they just go anywhere, and it's worth it for them. It's like long term sacrifice type of thing for or short term sacrifice for long term goals type thing.
So you guys still billing by the hour then, or how are you guys pricing returns?
Yeah, so we have a pricing package. It just fluctuates based off of gross revenue for the business.
Okay.
So we have like a pricing model. So if their gross revenue is at a certain level, they'll be billed at, I don't know, $1,000 per return, and then every level above that. So if it's like 1 million to 2 million, it'll increase 2 million to 3 million, 3 million to four. You name it.
Hmm.
Then the revenue just increases. We do have hourly work if it like is more complicated stuff, like for example, like 1031 exchanges or cost segregation studies. Like there's a lot of like tax related work that you can do that's more complicated, and so you'll have to bill hourly for that because it just takes up a lot more time. That's kind of out of the ordinary of typical like tax return work. Um, so yeah, I like our pricing models. I would say it's actually pretty fair. I send out the billing and the clients are happy because they're like, oh, that kind of matches what my expectations were, type of thing.
Okay. So you guys are doing all your billing after the tax return is sent out then?
Yes, so we do. We typically send out invoices after or after we send out their copy of the tax return. So how it works is you'll send out the client copy to the client for review, and then they have to send you back. It's called the 8879. It's their signature documents saying that we are authorized to e-file.
And the money?
At Yeah, and then we'll also send the invoice at the same time.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that works. So if they don't pay,
Doesn't get filed.
it doesn't get filed. I'm a little like I don't like doing that. Most of the time we'll still file it, right? Because it's kind of you get into a little bit of like ethical issues if you hold the filing because they don't pay. It's a little bit of like a gray area where a lot of clients can get mad or like, sometimes it doesn't feel right in your gut type of thing, at least for me, right? So typically I kind of look at the trends of the client and say, okay, they paid pretty frequently in the past. Like we'll send out the invoice, they pay within 3 days. Okay, I'll e-file it. But if they don't pay for like 6 months, then that's a little bit of a different story.
So I feel like there's a way to like avoid this whole issue. And here's what you're going to take back to your firm owner,
I'm ready.
Parker. Dude, just charge the clients when you sign your engagement letter to do their tax return. So then you're not avoiding that gray area, or you're avoiding the gray area where like, oh, we prepared the return, but we're withholding it. We're not filing it because they haven't
Right.
paid us. You just don't even do any work for them at all until they pay, right? And
Is it?
if you already have your tiers
Yeah.
built out and you know how much you're going to charge them, I mean, why not get all your money in advance and then there's no payables. You're not chasing money.
I mean, that's fair. I will say with that, the hard part is there are a lot of uncertainties that can come up within a return that you're not expecting, right? Like you
So
could,
then you just add on, you write a new engagement letter at the end of the term, You just put a clause inside the first engagement letter that this engagement letter can be prone to changes depending on what happens in the tax return.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Then, this is how we scope some of our engagements at the firm I work at. And we do this for not just tax, but for a lot of things. Like, the engagement letter can be prone to changes based on the scope of what's happening, right? So,
Right.
like, let's say a client wasn't giving you documentation and they waited till like 2 weeks before the deadline to give you all the documentation. Well, now you're working overtime, you're doing all this crap to try and get their return done on time. You got to charge more for that, man.
True. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I will say that's one really good thing about my firm specifically is we have meetings all the time where we're like, okay, what are things that can be improved on? Because like, as awesome as our manager is, like he is not in the nitty gritty details like we are, right? He sees the work we do and he's like, cool. All right. This is getting sent out. Awesome. Right. But that's one thing that I really enjoy is the communication within our firm is amazing because we can have things that we would like to see and we bring it up and he's like, oh, that's a really good idea. I didn't think about that. Or like, oh, I really like that idea. Let's try and implement it. Right. So that's one thing that is really awesome with my firm is the communication is just so open and I'm not afraid to share what I think would be a good strategy or what I think would be beneficial for the firm because they take that and they work with it and they accept it and it doesn't make me feel like it was a bad idea. So that's one thing that I really enjoy is just the communication there.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like a great place to work. And you guys got a cool name and a cool logo. So
It's true. It's true.
It's really good stuff. So for any young accounting professionals who are thinking of getting their EA, what do they need to know ahead of time? How hard are the exams?
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations of who they should study for? I'm going to be studying with Surgent. Who did you study with?
Throwing costs too.
Yeah. I could. No, yeah. So for the EA, I can give a background of like what the exams are like, what the structure is, what material is covered. So there's 3 parts. The first part is individual, second part is businesses, and third part is representation. So part 1 is obviously all about individual taxation. So you've got like your 1040, you've got your dependents, you've got what is considered as income, you've got
Schedule C.
above Schedule C, you've got above the line deductions, itemized deductions, and then you've got just like the random small little details that they kind of talk about. But it's mainly just all about individual taxpayers and what you need to know. Part 2 is businesses. This one is the most the most detailed and the most difficult. This one is it's hard because it's a lot of stuff especially if you have never done tax before and it's very new to you. Business taxation is crazy because it's just a lot of new material that you haven't seen before and a lot of new words that you haven't learned, a lot of new concepts that are very new. So it just takes a little bit of adjustment to kind of understand those. But I will say it's funny because I say it's the hardest, but that one was the easiest for me. I passed that one with flying colors. I got a near perfect score. I loved that one. And then part 3 is all about representation, which is all about like tax issues with clients, how to represent them in front of the IRS, how to practice in front of the IRS, certain like authorization forms, like power of attorneys, and stuff like that. There's also specific things like requirements for documentation, like how long you're supposed to hold documentation as a tax preparer, how long your representation may last. Like there's a lot of like small little details that goes over, like how just to represent your clients and how to be an advocate for your client. So that one was cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you. I want to compare it to the CPA. How much did it cost how much does it normally cost to take the exam?
So each exam, they updated it as of this year. They increased it with inflation. So I think it was, how much was it? 260? Yeah,
260.
260,
Okay.
like 265 per exam. Um, yeah, I think that's
Okay.
about right. 260,
Okay.
265-ish, something like that, per
Yeah.
exam.
Did you have to go into a testing center?
Did, yeah, you use Prometric.
Prometric. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
That's the same as the CPA. And I
Yeah.
can't
I was
remember
gonna
how
say,
much each exam costs, but I think it's a little more than that. It's probably
yeah.
in
I
the
think it was like
threes.
three. Yeah, it was like I think I was talking with somebody. It's like 325 or 350, something
Hmm.
like that per exam. So, and you guys, there's four exams. So the CPA exam is definitely more expensive than the EA, and your guys' review material is also more expensive. So the review material that I purchased, I bought it through Gleim, and I paid their premium package, which is what I got, was 700, which is actually relatively cheap compared to the CPA
Yeah,
because
I
I
want to
think
say CPA.
it was
It's
like
hard to
twenty five
remember
hundred.
because I don't think it was that much. It's
I've
hard to
heard, I've
remember
heard,
because
mm,
I think mine
probably
was
been a
like
while.
two grand. Yeah, it's been a while,
Yeah.
and if your firm pays for it, it's easier to forget how much it was. So
That's fair. That's fair.
that's and is it all
Yeah,
multiple choice or
it
is it
is.
okay?
Yep, yep. So there's 100 questions per exam. Their scoring is a little complicated because they aren't very transparent with how they do scoring, which is a little frustrating. So there's 100 questions. It's out of 130 points, and you have to get a 105 to pass. But it's weird because the lowest you can get if you fail it, get no questions right, the lowest you can get is a 40. So it's
That's
really weird.
random.
Yeah. So it starts at minimum is 140 if you fail. So if you get zero questions right, it's a 40. If you get all questions right, it's a 130, and then you have to get a 105 to pass. So I did some calculations. I think it's like a 70%. I think they don't really say. It's kind of annoying, but yeah. So basically a 105, which a lot of people say as when you're doing review, as long as your review scores are about 75 to 85%, you're
Then you're
pretty
good.
much guaranteed you're good, right?
Okay. One
Um,
last rapid
so yeah,
fire for you
yep,
on
yep.
that. Do you know what the average pass rate is for
I
our
do.
potential?
Yeah, yeah. So it depends on the part. So part one, I believe, has the lowest pass rate. And I think it was like 61%, which is a lot higher than the CPA. Part two, I think, was like 68 or 70%. And then part three is like 80 to 85.
Yeah, just to compare that with the CPA, I think I saw the last ones come out. The disciplines have been kind of weird. Some of the disciplines, the tax ones, been really easy to pass for
I was
people,
going
and
to
they have
say,
different
yeah,
theories about that. But some of the other ones were a lot less. But typically, you get FAR is like usually 40-ish%,
yeah,
and then some of
it's
the easier
wild.
ones tend to trend up to towards 65%.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just for
Well,
comparison.
because I think I looked at Q1 scores for the CPA, and it was like FAR had a 41%, and then like the tax discipline had like 80 something percent, 88, I think, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so the pass rates on the EA are definitely higher than the CPA, which is good because then it's not as daunting, right? Because I think a lot of people see the pass rates of the CPAs and they get a little scared. But the EA, the pass rates are a little higher just because it is so specific, right? Like you focus in on tax, and that's all you study, and so it's a lot easier to kind of just focus in on all of that. Whereas the CPA, there's a lot of material to cover, right? So that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Fun fact. Did you guys know the pass rate for the CPA exams is actually worse than the bar?
Really?
Okay, I just always qualify that just so I don't get people mad at me. Just I do think that there is a difference because these they have to go through law school first, which I
Yeah,
guess we have to get a lot of us have to get our masters, but I do think there's something to be said for people that go through law school and then there's a low pass rate. That's pretty rough, but
yeah,
it is crazy
yeah,
how they're pretty hard.
But it's just like an accounting degree. Law school isn't specifically catered to the bar. And in
that's
fact,
true.
law schools aren't really allowed to like they don't have like a bar prep course.
Oh,
It's
really?
it's law school. It's just like accounting, right? Like why couldn't a master's degree just be a CPA exam prep course that you pay for and it's the equivalent of a master's degree? Like they're not legally allowed to do that, I guess. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
but yeah,
That's just
I
crazy.
always like making people mad with that statistic. I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and didn't
Oh,
ChatGPT pass the bar exam way easy first, and then it eventually got up
Yeah,
to the CPA exam, but
yeah,
I think
the bar was
ChatGPT
gone like
3
nothing.
passed the bar. Yeah, ChatGPT 3 passed the bar, but it took ChatGPT 4 to pass all the CPA exams.
yep, yep. I remember that.
That's funny.
That was pretty crazy. I bet he would. I bet he would pass the EA just fine. And of
Yeah, just
Okay,
course,
upload the
so
tax code. Just upload the federal
yeah,
tax code and
yep,
boom,
yep.
you got
No,
it.
yeah. I will say that's one thing that I would love to see in the future is I would love to see a lot more EA like discussions and EA representation because like everyone's talking about the bar and the CPA and how ChatGPT needs to pass that, but did they do it for the EA? Probably not,
So
right?
Parker, here's an idea and we'll kind of start ending with this idea, but why don't you be the young representative for EAs, man?
That's
Start
a
an
good
EA
point.
podcast, get an
That's a
EA
good point.
TikTok going. Like, dude, you be the man for EAs and you push
That's
it
true.
forward.
That is a good point. See, I've thought about it. I will admit I've thought about it, but I just don't know if I could do it as good as you. Like
But
that's just
that's not my
gotta start
goal though,
somewhere though.
man. You
That's
you
true.
you got
You
your
gotta start
niche.
somewhere.
Your niche
That's
is
true.
is the EA, and like hearing how jacked up you got about tax, like dude, people would absolutely love to hear that.
Yeah.
Going to schools, talking about the EA. Dude, I
Yeah.
think you're onto something, man. Think you're onto
It's true.
something.
Yeah. No, and that's one thing that I tell a lot of people is like I would love to go into like a college classroom and just talk to people about the EA and just hype it up because I feel like not a lot of people know what it is unless they're in tax or they're in the field, right? I had no idea until I started working for a tax firm, right? So like a lot of people in college don't know what other options are out there. Okay, now I'm sure it's probably the same with the CMA. Like I had no idea what the CMA was until I started at my firm, right? So it's like there's a lot of avenues that I would love for accounting students to know and to learn about because then they could figure out what option is best for them, right? It's not always CPA, CPA, CPA.
So everybody be on the lookout. Parker's gonna have an EA podcast soon, a
Yep.
tax podcast, and
Yep.
he's gonna have an all EA firm someday.
That would be
He's
awesome.
he's gonna get sued because they'll only bring in EAs. That's it.
Yep, that's
And
what
only wear T-shirts that say EA
Yep.
Sports.
EA Sports.
It's in the game. Yeah, there you go.
That's gonna be my slogan.
Dude, that could be the name of
Get
your
sued
podcast,
for that too.
dude.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Parker, we've loved having you on. Great friend of mine, great conversation. Love what you're doing for EAs and for tax. What's the last little bit of advice you'd give to, a middle, someone in your same spot, right? Like
Yeah.
either just
Yeah.
coming out of school, maybe they have the first year under their belt, what advice do you have?
I think the biggest advice I have is just chase your dreams. As cliche as that sounds, like chase what you want to chase and don't let it hold you back. Like chase all the avenues that are out there and go for it. If you're enjoying tax or you're enjoying audit or you're enjoying anything, just go after it, dive head first, and the benefits will come.
Love that. Go
Yeah.
dive head first. Just
Dive head
dig in.
first.
Just go
Yep.
for it.
Just dig into the
Absolutely
tax
love
code.
that.
All 4,000, all 6,000 pages. Just read every single one.
Polite night reading.
Parker
There you go.
Parker's got a big stack of the tax code like on his nightstand. He just
Yep,
reads
I
it
do.
before he goes to bed.
Yep. My favorite.
Oh, well, that sounds great. Well, hey, this was such a fun episode. Everyone, we're so thankful for listening and supporting our podcast. Please make sure you check us out on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Go like and share our content, and make sure you share the podcast with other accounting students and accounting professionals. We're trying to get it out to as many people as possible. And in the links below, we'll have our link directly to Big Four Transparency, so you can check them out. And we'll also have Parker's LinkedIn in there too, so you can go connect with Parker. So thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you all next week.